Hey, Nerdarchy here. For nerds by nerds. I'm Nate, the Nerdarchist, and here we have
Dave,
Ted,
and Ryan.
And today we're going to be talking about proficiencies. And
in
proficiencies?
in 5th edition.
5th edition. That's right. We're already
Dungeons
up
and
to
Dragons,
5.
even.
Yes, indeed.
Indeed.
So to start off, who wants to say the most about it? You
The
get to
most?
go.
I don't
I'll say
know.
the least.
Do we have to rock,
Least?
paper,
Yeah,
scissors
so
over that?
Rochambeau.
I'm going to just ask questions. I'm out of this. So go.
Go! All right, so...
What do you think?
What do I think? I think I keep fucking it up and calling it non-weapon proficiency.
Yeah,
That's what I think.
yeah.
Spent too much time playing 2nd edition.
It's, dude, it really does. It throws me back to my old AD&D games. I like it, I think a lot of people, especially if you're more used to 3.x or Pathfinder, you see you don't have all these skill ranks and you don't have as many skills to choose, so you feel like you're restricted somehow. But for those of us that come from that AD&D first edition, I see more freeform, because I don't see a restriction there. I want to do this, and the DM goes, okay, give me a roll, and you go, hey, I have X proficiency. Does that give me a bonus?
Yeah. Well, so here's the thing. Like, while it does make me sad that you can't really make a character that is as much of a dabbler in the given thing. A character that kind of sort of knows how to do this and that. All the difficulties of doing things have been lowered across the board. So you're either proficient in something or not, so you're just more good at it. But some things just going off of raw.
More good at it?
More good at it.
More good at it.
Well, I could have used the formal gooder form of that phrase, but
I prefer more better.
Right, or more better. Right, that's right. Betterer, perhaps.
Betterer.
So yeah, you could either be proficient and be better at doing something, or you just use your raw stat, and your proficiency is only like starting out a +2, and it gets up to being
Only a
+6, a whopping +6. So all with the streamlining of the difficulty classes and the lowering of them, it makes your odds, so even if you're not proficient in doing something, your odds increase.
Right. Well, you said you can't make a dabbler, but in essence,
Everyone's a dabbler.
everyone's a dabbler.
Right.
You get the ability to say, all right, I'm not trained in this, so I don't get this minor bonus, but you can make a roll.
And if it's something you're innately gifted at, like if you make a dexterous rogue that maybe doesn't have acrobatics,
Right.
You're still a very dexy character.
Right, so you don't get that small bonus of your proficiency, but you're still relying on your stat and whatever you manage to get on the die roll. If you can work out through role playing or situational, you get advantage. You might not even need that proficiency.
Yeah, the advantage is pretty key too.
Well, you know what too I noticed, which is kind of really cool, like the rogue. I guess if you're playing a rogue, you might feel like you're taking a hit because that used to be their thing, the skills, that and sneak attack. And now there's not as many to take, so you don't get as many bonuses. But I think their expertise really makes up for it. That's pretty
Well, be like that's when you made a rogue in past editions. Like it's like you dabbled in a lot of things, but you picked a small handful of skills that were like the things you really excelled at. And usually it's like stealth and like disable device or whatever.
Well, and so that mechanic is still essentially there.
You're right.
Now, we can't talk about proficiencies without talking about ability scores because they're so tied
together, yeah.
in this edition. And going back to the rogue expertise, right? And looking at ability stats. So anything above 20 is kind of been reserved in this edition for monsters and divine beings.
Right.
So, when you get your maximum bonus of +6, and then you get a +5 for your stat, and then you're a rogue, and that's your thing, right? So that's a +17. Well, near impossible check is 30. So, for a high-level rogue that's maxed out, you
can do
almost half
nearly
the time
impossible.
you can do the nearly impossible, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really neat.
So, and, again, now here's the thing that I don't understand how it's going to quite work yet, and that's saving throws. And I know we're talking about proficiencies, but we're also talking about
stats. When you're talking about stats,
and they just took all those
No fort reflex will anymore.
Yeah, it's just gone, and now it's just you have your stat saves, and like all of them make sense to me easy enough, except for it's like what are they going to do with charisma? Yeah, like
I mean that could be a save versus some kind of psychic or drain attack. Yeah, something that's affecting you.
Yeah, and I guess me and you were talking about the other day. It's like, so maybe a psychic vampire that feeds on your essence. You might have to save versus that.
Shadow's trying to drain your strength. Is that a strength roll? Is that a charisma roll? Where's that gonna fall in?
Yeah, so that's definitely a new thing. But I think as the game flows on, that's going to be more of an intrinsic mechanic that's going to kind of flow pretty easily. Obviously, it's going to be mapped out, save versus this, save versus that. But, I mean, what they did is they got rid of those extra stats, essentially.
Yeah.
By tying it to your abilities. And, each class has two
Bonus,
stats they're proficient in.
Right, yeah, for saves. Yeah,
yeah, and so they get a bonus to that, and then that's what they're good at. So what else have we got going on with the
well, with
proficiencies?
I was going to say, in relation to your stats, we've got a lowered number across the board. He mentions the DCs are lowered across the board, and you said that the nearly impossible is only a 30, whereas in some of the later books there were checks that were into the 80s.
Well, like epic levels.
Yeah, rolls. But still, it's hilarious. Though. Too bad we didn't break those out to share them with you guys. I'm sure you've seen them. But escape artists to go through a wall of force or swim check up a waterfall. That's a couple of my personal favorites.
They are phenomenal, and their numbers are beyond ridiculous. But the fact that they put them in the book means that either
somebody can do it.
Somebody has done it, or somebody has asked about it, or the rules are there to make it feasible. I'm certain that there are spells that give obnoxious bonuses, in the earlier editions.
Well, jump isn't jump in 3rd edition like plus 30?
Something like that.
So
yeah, it's plus something like 30.
Yeah, so getting the ridiculous bonuses isn't too hard. Where this edition, they've really pulled that all back to really lower the baseline. I mean, if you look at your stats, you're ranging 8 to 15 if you take the array. If you buy, you can't buy beyond a 15.
Mm-hmm.
If you roll 4 die 6, you have a possibility of getting 16 or above.
If you roll well.
If you roll well, and that is the only way.
Right.
And then the simple fact that they said, hey, you cannot get beyond a 20. Far, I mean, there may be rules that come out and change that.
Like the tomes, level. Like the various tomes, the tome of intellect,
based on the info we have, it strictly says PCs do not go above 20, and it's in multiple places.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's probably going to be a rule across the board, or take artifact level abilities to go beyond that.
Which I find it interesting. See, we haven't delved into monsters yet, so I really wonder what the monsters look like as far as hit points and
and their AC and stuff like that. Like what the baseline.
I'm thinking that things are going to be pared down to an extent to go. More along the lines of what the PCs can deal with.
Which is funny because, it's actually almost like the polar opposite of what Pathfinder did. Where Pathfinder ratcheted everything up.
Well, it was in the lineage of 3rd edition, I really feel like.
Yeah, but they took it and ran with it.
Yeah, 3.5 ratcheted things up, and then Pathfinder, like you said,
I think they've maintained the level of what was going on.
So, but in 5th, they're going, we're pulling it all back. Yeah. And really just the baseline is starting so much lower. I kind of like it.
Well, I mean, it harkens back to like a 2nd edition, very like, it's almost like reading the Dragonlance Chronicles, like where like they're all low-level adventurers, and it comes across through reading it, kind of thing. So.
And we've said it in an earlier video. It does feel like it's a cross between 2nd and 3rd, rather than.
I even think there's some design aesthetics that. There's some elements I almost feel of like Dungeon World a little bit, if you've ever played it. It's a very stripped-down RPG. And some design thoughts from 4th edition, I think, came into through it, too. Like the being able to use your dexterity as a damage stat, like that's definitely something that we haven't seen before 4th.
That's definitely a 4th attribute.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's very few things that I feel flowed from 4th downward into 5th.
Well, I mean... I would say the stripped down proficiency, like I think a little bit of the design aesthetic that went into the 4th, it's somewhere between 2nd edition and 4th edition with the way the proficiencies are working, in my opinion.
No, you're right there, and Except for like they kind of did, but then they pulled it back even further from fourth, because fourth was like a step back from third with the skills.
Right.
And then, and now fifth is a step even further back. But in the sense that, like, I think in fourth you had skills you couldn't do, or
you
was
had
it?
trained and untrained skills. Right?
Okay.
Like that was.
But now,
and there's some skills that you absolutely had to be trained in. I wonder, did they do away with that? Did you guys see any notation? Like knowledge used to be the thing. You absolutely had to be trained in it.
Now it's you can make a roll.
I haven't seen anything to contradict that.
Because I believe in most of the 3X core books, it was you can make knowledge checks up to DC 10 untrained, which is fairly common knowledge. And so I don't know if it's like, hey, I rolled a 20. I read this thing somewhere in a bar room bathroom stall or something, and I know this thing.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, from again without getting access to the books.
We need the books.
Yes,
Must have.
I've got my PHP pre-ordered, but that's as far as I can go so far. But without that, it just seems like right now you can be able to make any check untrained, and knowledges they've left it off that you just get history, religion, and arcana, and that's it. And they're not even listed as knowledges. It's just boom, arcana, history, religion.
Yeah. Well, and really, I feel like this is going to bring you back to that AD&D game where you're like, I want to do this, and your DM's like, grab percentile dice and roll really high.
Yeah.
Or was it really low back then? It was really low.
Really low
wasn't it?
back then, yeah.
Yeah.
You had to roll under.
You want
Now
divine intervention? You drop that 01 and I'll give it to you. Your god will show up and put the boot to somebody's ass for you.
Well, see, now you can actually let that happen because it's in there.
It's in there, yeah. Which
Well, divine intervention was a first ed or AD&D thing too.
Nah, dude, that was a thing that every DM just
house ruled it in.
House ruled it in. Like there might have been a blurb in Deities and Demigods, but for the most part, like
it wasn't core for anything.
Yeah, we just all DMs did it. You're a cleric, or actually anybody. You pray to your god, and you drop the low die roll. We'll let it happen.
And now it's built right into the cleric.
Which is really cool because it shows that the design team Watts are paying attention to what was happening in the games. So when we moved from second to third, which it was a great move. Like, you got to do things with your character you never got to do before. It was really exciting. But in doing that, we kind of missed what we lost.
Right.
That free-form play that we used to do, we stopped doing because the rules told us how to do everything. And I didn't realize it until I moved to, to systems that were more rules light and more story-based than mechanic-based. And then, looking in retrospect, doing a side-by-side with 5th edition and 4th edition and 3rd edition and 2nd edition, I can really see what we lost. But, what's nice about 5th is, bless you again, it seems like they're taking the free-form style of play from earlier editions, combining it with the good mechanics and design from 3rd and 4th edition. To just make a superior game. Because I know a lot of people don't like 4th edition, but,
there were a lot of good elements to it.
It was designed really well. Now, maybe too well in the sense of... See, here's the funny thing, right? When you look at Dungeons & Dragons, it was a miniature war game converted into something else, something new, right? Well, 3rd edition went backwards. They went back towards turning it into a miniatures war game, right?
Well, I mean, in essence, they not only made, the tabletop role-playing game allow you to use the miniatures, but they also made the miniature war game
chainmail or something, right?
Well, no, that's not true. It's completely wrong, and let me explain why.
Well, no, I'm saying that the miniatures that you would actually buy for the game actually had
skirmish rules,
two sides of cards that you could actually use to play another game in building little armies to fight each other.
Well, here's the thing though, people were always using miniatures. People used to buy the old Ralpartha miniatures and sand them and paint them and use them in their games. You'll see amazing setups that people are doing. I was like, man, I wish that was my DM. But for their games. But what we didn't have back then was the tactical rules to go along with it. 3rd edition introduced the tactical rules back into it for
Yeah, that's the first time that our group really ever used miniatures.
And what's funny is how angry people got from 3rd to 4th, because if you really think about what Watts did is they actually just moved along the progression. You know, even a step further. Like, and a lot of this stuff I've thought of in retrospect. But yeah, because a lot of people, like, it feels like a board game. It feels like a video game. You know, all these comments, yet 3.5 actually moved the bar in that direction first.
Right.
And then 4th, it just followed the progression.
Right.
They thought that's what people wanted. So it was a mistake on their part. But
the pinball machine said tilt, though, because they pushed too far.
Yeah, but I don't think it was wholly their fault.
Yeah.
Like, in retrospect, if you think about, you know, the way the game's progressed.
Well, and then there's the lingering arguments back and forth of whether it was also to capture the MMO crowd, because the way abilities worked and the recharges and the accessibilities. Because earlier editions of D&D were very more like a battle of attrition. Mm-hmm. Like, my first level wizard in 2nd edition, like, you know, like, you're like, I have 2 spells to cast all day, and I do not get any more spells until I sleep.
Then I got a dagger. That's it.
And then that I can't hit with anyway.
And the fighter could just swing his sword all day.
And then, like, you contrast that with, like, the 4th edition that has, like, 3 at-will powers and, like, a daily and an encounter, and it's just, like, because in MMO culture, you don't run out.
Right.
You know? Your quiver is never unfull of spell or whatever.
You know, and while I'm in some of that crowd that feels that 4th edition was lacking something or made changes that I didn't like, I have to admit, you know, playing a wizard, it was awesome to be able to say, you know what, I'm never going to be out of Magic Missile. You know, I can cast this until I pass over from exhaustion. I thought that was awesome.
I've always enjoyed the resource management that comes from low levels. Like, you really have to plan and think. Like, I mean, it's part on the GM. But
it's never fun to cast 2 spells and be done for the day.
I don't know.
Throwing darts.
Well, I mean, like, when we play next time, your wizard can have 2 spells.
Well, like,
and then throwing darts.
3rd edition, like baseline, where you could have maybe like 4 spells for the day, and, like, your cantrips and stuff, and you'd have some things to do. Like, the 3rd edition wizard was a pretty comfortable place to be. It's like, you're not totally boned, but you may want to look for some other things to do other than hurling spells, because you want to manage what little resources you have.
Well, I like what Pathfinder did with that.
Right.
They did give you more resources to manage.
Right.
Where, like, I mean, pretty much, you know, you were going to have...
And they were all thematic, too, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, and it was all thematic. You know, you probably had, like, between 9 and 12 things you could do per day before you ran out in Pathfinder.
Right.
Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, like, you get, like, your power stat plus three uses of a given ability, whatever it is.
Right, and then you have your spell, so that they moved into that direction, so that's better.
Well, that was borrowing from 4th edition design aesthetic, I think, too. Like, they saw 4th edition giving people a little more option. Like, yeah, let's borrow that one. Yeah.
But yeah, no, and now 5th edition, you know, I guess we moved way beyond proficiencies in this discussion.
Do we want to get back on the rails? Or?
Yeah, we might as well get back on the rails. We'll save that for the rest of that discussion for another day. But, you know, it all stems, you know, from the same place. You know, the baseline we're talking about with the abilities, where it's come from, where it's gone, and kind of some of the history, you know, of D&D in the game. So, you know, our conversation is a natural progression, just the way that D&D is naturally progressed through different things, for better or worse at times. But hey, you know, when I look at the proficiency system now, when I look at abilities, and I look at this whole edition that we're getting in 5th as a whole, I'm so happy we had that failure of Watts with 4th edition and Pathfinder taking off, because I think we're going to get something really unique and special now.
Yeah, you know, I think you know, the direction it's going to offer, you know, really interesting stuff. You know, again, I'm really eager to get my hands on, you know, the next piece of information, you know, and see, you know, the bigger picture, see what else they've got to offer, because I mean, so far everything I've read, you know, while there's been a couple things that make me go, huh. There's a lot of good stuff there, and I'm really, you know, eager about the direction.
So, well, since you mentioned it, what makes you go, huh?
Oh, I mean, it's just things I mentioned in the other videos. I mean, there's some...
Not proficiencies.
yeah. It was basically not, not in the proficiency section. It's just, most of the stuff, like I said, the general direction looks good. There's a couple things that are just, questionable. Foremost, it was the number of turn undeads that a cleric gets.
Oh yeah, I was not happy when I read when I get it and how many times I can do it.
It's like 1, 6, and 18. That they get an additional use, but
Well, basically, it's like you could pull off one of those once per encounter-ish. Like, because if you take an hour rest, you get it back.
Right, but
I like to feel that it is more of an extraordinary power now instead of like a spam attack against undead. Like bam, 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 bam.
Well, it's spam blast.
Yeah, machine gun turning.
Yeah.
They all explode.
And we haven't seen feats yet, so we have no idea.
There could be a feat that makes you a very effective channeler and gives you more.
Uber Turner,
Yeah.
Uber Turner.
Yeah, I mean, with I know that it refreshes with a short or a long rest, but I mean, we run games where it's always about you got to push. If you're in a dungeon, you might not get that ability to just sit down.
Well, I know this is off topic, but I don't know what other video we would cover it in. So let's address this real quick. Short and long rests, right? This has always been kind of an issue of the game, right? Like I know Ryan, you've always bitched about
railed it, yeah,
the 4-hour workday.
Yeah.
But the short rest makes sense, and it recharges some of your stuff.
Right.
And that mini rest gives you enough, maybe just enough to keep going. So how do you feel about that?
I like it because there's even like the real world analog to where like you come home from your day job and you just need an hour to unwind and chill before you do the rest of the shit you have to do for the rest of the day.
You just can't cleave one more freaking orc head until you've had that rest. And
right,
exactly.
You got to take off your dusty, weary boots. Maybe drink some grog. And then, then sharpen your blades and get back, put your boots back on, and go kill some more orcs.
So any opinions, you guys? On that?
With me, I've been in the the gaming community for going on 20 years.
So you're coming out as part of the gaming community.
Yes. Yeah. So I've been in games where we've done that. We've had one encounter, the whatever we fought totally kicked our ass, and it's like, well, looks like we're stopping here because
we're gonna camp, but you've only left an hour ago.
It's like, well, sorry guys, I'm out of spells. That dude's unconscious because he's been beat to hell, and that guy's wandered off from a confusion spell or whatnot. We're hoping he comes back soon. So it's like, well, what options do you have? The dice didn't go your way. The DM rolled a couple crits.
Or maybe
somebody died.
The DM was a killer. GM.
Or the DM was throwing something that was just way above your power level,
right?
And you decided to fight anyway. Whatever the case may be, there's times that's happened. And in previous editions, the only option was to camp. And it's possible that we said, okay, we set out, and 5 minutes down the road, you encountered this thing. We could have walked back to the previous campsite. I think we've done it at least once. So it's like, yeah, we made no progress. We're going to go rekindle that fire and, call it a day.
Hopefully some embers are still going so we don't have to start it from scratch.
Right. It'd be so much work.
And there's other times where you're in a dungeon and you need to rest, but there is no way to set up a camp. So it's like, well, what do you do? And maybe, this whole option of a short rest is something that, may be able to be that bridge. But until I actually have a chance to actually see what the short rest feels like in a game, is the GM going to sit back and say, okay, well, you guys are trying to power up here. If you're in a dungeon scenario, how many perception checks.
They might be rolling for some random encounters or whatever.
Yeah, random encounters.
But you only need an hour, so that's only one possibility for a random encounter once.
Yeah.
Right.
Generally.
Okay, so the short rest, for those people who don't know what a short rest is, maybe including me, it's an hour.
It's about an hour.
Yeah.
So you're just resting for an hour, and then you're going back to your tasks, and you get a few of your abilities back, but not. It's not like.
And you also
rest.
you have a pool of hit die that you use for like self-healing essentially. So based on your hit die, you can expend that many for healing. which works well with the explanation of what hit points are, what health is in this edition of the game. It's not actual wounds. You know, it's just you know, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, abrasions, scratches. You haven't received a wound unless you've dropped a 0. So, you know, you basically just, like you said, you need to get home from work and, you know, shake it off for a minute, you know?
Right.
And so, yeah, that's what the short rest and the long rest is, you know, what everyone traditionally understands as making camp for an hour, you know, for a night or whatever. So I like the hit die pool mechanic, and I like the fact that after a long rest, you only get half of it back. So it's an expendable resource, it's limited, but here's what I don't like. After the extended rest, you get all your hit points back. Insta heal. I hate that.
Oh yeah, we won't be doing that. Like, I know you want to stay on book, but
yeah. So initially we may do that, but eventually that'll probably be a house rule, and that's because like that's personal taste. Like the way they explain it, it's not stupid like it was in 4th edition. Their explanation to me makes sense for why you heal all the way back, but I personally just like a grittier game.
And that when you're really beat the next day. 8 hours does not magically fix that.
No.
You wake up and you feel like an old dish rag.
If somebody's helped a buddy move, like over a long weekend day or whatever, you're sore the next day. You're not full up and limber ready to go.
Go do 8 to 10 hours of manual labor and then get up and tomorrow ready to do it again. You're not going to be like, oh man, I feel awesome. You're going to be like, oh god, I feel like
somebody
crap.
Just shoot me.
I don't want to do this again.
And you know, I equate it to going to the gym and getting a really good workout where you're sore for a couple of days. So yeah, like the next day it doesn't instantly go away, and that's just working out in the gym. That's not having monsters try and tear you apart with their claws, or having ogre punch you in the head a couple times.
Because that's a really bad day at the gym when that happens.
That is a really bad day.
Yeah,
but. You know, since we've gone this far off topic, we've gone through all the editions. We've been punched in the head with ogres. We're too tired to cut off even another orc's head. I think we should wrap this video up on proficiencies and
Proficiencies, long rests.
We failed our proficiency check of being on topic, on derailment and relevancy. There we go. So until next time.
With that, make sure you click like, comment, subscribe.
Visit nerdarchy.com.
Check us out on Facebook.
We're on Twitter, Instagram,
Pinterest. Yeah, you can't swing a dead goblin without hitting a Nerdarchy something or other across the web. So if you Google Nerdarchy, you might get a half dozen hits or so.
Feel free to put your comments on our wild amounts of tangents below. And with that, until next time, stay nerdy,
my friends.